And we got the feedback here from Cool McCain. So, yeah, like I said, I think it was my mistake even going with the Giants to cover the points. But watching the Eagles, I mean, that was just they
without
didn't
this.
even let off the gas once at all in that game, right?
Yeah, man. I think you were saying some great things. I know I missed a few minutes of it when I had to come back in, but
Yeah, no
um,
worries.
the funny thing is, we've had all these people all year, all these prognosticators, all these anti-Jalen Hurts fans, and some of them have been actually from the Eagles fan base, unfortunately. But we've had all these people say, "Oh, he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that, he hasn't done this." You can't win a playoff game until you get to the playoffs and play.
Mhm.
Um, there's a progression for quarterbacks, right? He came in his first year, he played a couple of games. The locker room loved him over Wentz. Wentz ended up leaving. Last year, tough, really rookie season. First year, actually, really being a starter. Got to the playoffs, got embarrassed by Tom Brady and the Bucks.
Mhm.
Progression, learning. Now you're hungrier. Now you say, okay, I see what it takes to win regular season. I see what it takes to win playoffs. Now I need to go get myself better so that next year I'm where Tom Brady was last year,
Mhm.
and I'm watching someone else walk off the field dejected because they lost and not me and my team. So that's where we're at now. We went out and procured one of the, in my opinion, the top 10 receivers in the league. And I'm being modest when I say 10. I really think it's five. Um, and A.J. Brown. We paired him with another great up and coming receiver, another real number one receiver, Devontae Smith. Great tight end play from us. Even when Goddard was out, Calcaterra, some other guys stepped up and stole and did enough, right? Running backs, we have three running backs who can go out and get us yards, as you can see from the stats last night. Hurts is back healthy. He's not looking scared, but he is running smartly, which is all I've ever wanted from him. And 95% of the defense is back. We're only missing Avonte Maddox. Every other one of our pieces defensively is finally back, healthy and playing. Lane Johnson is back, makes a big difference at left tackle. Right tackle. And, it was just a complete game from the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is a team that we've done this to before when we were complete. So this is not a surprise to me. But I will shout out Daniel Jones because this was a guy that was under pressure every play. Every single snap that Daniel Jones took, he was under pressure. And he still attempted to make throws. He kept it in the game. There wasn't a lot he could do just because of the pressure, but he stuck in there. He played hard. He didn't do a lot, but, heart is big. Sometimes you need that loss. Like we needed it last year. You need that loss to say, okay, for the organization to reevaluate and say, we need to get this guy more weapons. We need to get this guy more pieces. We need a better line. These are the things the Giants need. We knew this coming into the game. We knew this when they won last week, but we know Tampa Bay was old. Tom Brady, didn't seem like the old Tom Brady that we've known forever. Um, with that situation, I just say, if I'm Leftwich, I'm happy, right? Because now you get a chance to go and pick a better situation to be in. You actually did that guy a favor. But back to the Eagles, man. It was just a complete needed game. A lot of people doubted us. A lot of people are going to still doubt us if we play San Francisco. They're going to say that we can't beat San Francisco. That we can only beat the Giants. If we play the Cowboys, it'll be the same thing. If we win that game, we get to the Super Bowl. We can't beat anybody from the AFC. And honestly, as an Eagles fan, that's the situation I want to be in. I don't want you to say that we can win because we always play better when you doubt us. So everyone, please continue doubting us.
What's that saying that they say? The underdog, chants, because hopefully they bust that mask out right there, because that was
Yeah, not the
normally the
Max.
cry they had when they won in 2017. So it is interesting. I mean, even comparing from the 17 Eagles to right now's Eagles in 22. Um, and it is interesting, and it's funny you say that, because I've said this time and time and time again about the Eagles. I felt like in 17, it was a team win rather than specifics of,
Mm-hmm.
well, Nick Foles is better than Carson Wentz. I
Right.
was dealing with that whole heckle like for years. And I said, look, just keep drinking your beer. If I'm
Right.
out in a Philly bar, I'm like, just keep drinking your beer. You have no idea what you're talking about. But watching Jalen Hurts, he's progressing every week. And
Mm-hmm.
so watching him, and I know a lot of people were skeptical because of the shoulder, but I felt like he was better. And even talking about the defense too. I mean, I thought big upgrades from the secondary finally was like the one thing that they needed, because Darius Slay needed help. So they go
Mm-hmm.
get CJ Gardner Johnson, and they go and get A couple
Right,
of other
very.
really good ones. So it's like this team, as you mentioned, very completed. And so it's like, do we kind of have a same similar feel like we did in 17 as, not as just a specific player getting them over the hump, but it was more of a team effort striving out of the trenches?
Oh yeah, definitely, man. It's definitely been the team. The one difference between this team and the 2017 team is that we don't have a big bruising back that we're using. But the guys that we have are getting it done. So I'm not saying that they're not capable of getting it done. I'm just saying that's really the only difference that I honestly see. I think we have better wide receiver play, equal tight end play. I think Goddard at this point is almost as or as good as Ertz was, back in 2017. Definitely, I think this defense as a whole is better right now because of Avonte Maddox being out, which is really an actual really important piece for us because he's our nickel corner. He's that third corner. So he's the guy that would come in and play that. So what we have is we have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson because he can play that playing that. But that takes him out of the position where he gets a lot of interceptions at strong safety. But we have Reed Blankenship, who is one of our rookies, who's come in from Middle Tennessee State. And he's played well. He flies all over the field. And I'm not saying he has the same skill level. So Eagles fans, if you see this, don't attack me. But he reminds me of the way he plays like a Brian Dawkins. He's just all over the place, right? He's just aggressiveness. He's hitting. Hands aren't that good, but that's okay. You play defense. There's a reason why you play defense. If you could catch really well, you'd probably be a wide receiver, right? Or at least a running back. So I'm fine with that. But it allows everyone else to do their thing. There was a time in the year where we had to play Josiah Scott, and this is no knock on Josiah Scott, but you're not at the same level. So when you were there, it changed things because these guys kind of have an understanding. Like you give you a certain look. Okay, I'll go deep. For instance, a lot of people talk about the Cowboys game and the big play T.Y. Hilton had. A lot of people wanted to put that play on Darius Slay. The play was not on Darius Slay. Darius Slay was supposed to be the underneath.
Right.
Josiah Scott was supposed to be over the top in that zone. Josiah Scott undercut the zone and got in front of T.Y. Hilton. Had he got behind him as he was supposed to, worst case scenario, he breaks up the play. But because he came under him, he gave T.Y. Hilton an opportunity to make the play, and he made the play. So having that guy in there that understands, let me get over the top, let me fight for the ball, let me try to get an interception or at least knock the ball down, that's going to be the difference between some of the big plays that we don't see now that we were seeing a couple of weeks ago when everybody wrote the Eagles off. We lost 2 games with our backup quarterback. And then for Micah Parsons, you asked the question early in the year, was it Jalen Hurts or was it the team? I think we can resoundingly say it's Jalen Hurts, sir.
Oh, yeah. I mean, now that he's finally got a playoff win, I mean, and it's such an interesting vibe because we watched Doug Peterson. Now, I think he's got a great thing in Jacksonville. I think having Trevor Lawrence and like I mentioned before the show, next year I'm watching them winning that division next year because Calvin Ridley will be healthy. They got Christian Kirk. They actually got a really good wide receiver depth, but I think they need to fix a little of the line and some parts of defense, and I think they'll be better. Because I think Tennessee is not going to be the same team unless I'm telling you, I'm watching this over and over again. What if something happened where to Aaron Rodgers? I mean, that would be a fit. And then what's to say they don't make a phone call to Arizona to get DeAndre Hopkins? I mean, they could make it happen. So that's why I'm like, I think if Tennessee does this right, it's a possibility, but I just see the Jaguars winning that division. Oh yeah, and I mean Jalen Hurts because every year, and he's getting thicker, he's gotten better, and he's just somebody that's just that special to where it's different from what we saw in Carson Wentz. Because Carson was real accurate. Now, there were times where he had some accuracy issues, but I think part of that is, I don't know if it was more of just the play caller from the offensive coordinator position, but some of those throws he made were very questionable. But now we see this. Nick Sirianni is just fired up. Like he's the kind of thing you want in Philadelphia. You want somebody who's fired up, who loves it when people are doubting the team. Like you mentioned, the underdogs. And it just feels like it's a little similar, but it's a different kind of vibe. And I actually really enjoy this one than what I saw in 2017. So evaluating tonight's game between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, you've played the Cowboys, and even with a backup quarterback, he got close to 400 passing yards. That's why I'm like, I'm watching this, and Brock Purdy, a backup quarterback who's playing really accurately and I think is there to stay for San Francisco. I'm just looking at this, and I think if they let him loose, like how they let Gardner Minshew loose, I'm thinking that's spelling trouble for Dallas tonight.
Yeah, I think San Francisco is going to run the ball on quite a bit as well, too. Though they're going to use McCaffrey, they're going to use Elijah Williams. They're going to use like a 3-back set, and they have a big back. I think his name is Godfrey. I can't remember exactly, but he comes in late in the games, and he's a bowling ball with feet, as Key likes to say, and he's very much able to attack the defenses late in the game. But I think they're going to run the ball a lot. But, I mean, you're going to throw. You have George Kittle. You have Deebo Samuel. You have Brandon Ayuk. You're going to fire some passes. McCaffrey's going to catch the ball at the backfield some as well. So I think they're going to try to eat them in both phases of the game. And the thing is, I call this team one of the Yak Goat teams. And what I mean after that is these throws are 5-10 yards, and then they're going to get it after that. We do that really well. Miami Dolphins do that really well. In certain situations, Kansas City does that well as well. But those teams who can throw like the 5-yard screen or the 5-yard out or the 5-yard cross or whatever, and the guy can get the ball and turn it into a 20, 30-yard play, those guys that are real good at yak, those are important when you get in these situations because a lot of times you only get a couple of real opportunities. Like, for instance, the Philadelphia Eagles did not capitalize on one opportunity last night, and that was a deep throw to A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Other than that, we capitalized on the opportunities that were there. Dallas does – well, we have to look at which Dallas team we're going to see. For me, there's 3 Dallas teams. There's a team where Dak plays well, everybody else plays pretty good, and he's able to take over a game like he did last week. There's Dak plays pretty well, but they throw the ball too much, so they don't get the backs involved enough, so they don't control the clock enough, which leads to a tight game or a loss that they shouldn't have. And there's a team where Dak and the team is not playing well, and that does not work well for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think we'll see the latter. I think we'll see the second one. I think San Francisco is going to put enough pressure on them where they're going to feel like they need to throw a lot. They're not going to feel as confident in the running game over time, and that's going to make them more one-dimensional. And then defensively, they have not been strong against the run in any games. You talk about like the Eagles game. It's not that they were strong against the run. We just decided to throw the ball all game instead of run the ball. When we were running, we were getting, we averaged like 4.5, 5 yards to carry in the game. We just abandoned the run game. Gardner Minshew missed a few throws that had he made that I don't think Brock Purdy would miss. We would have won that game. So I think that you're looking at a guy in Brock Purdy who knows what he's going to be up against with the Dallas Cowboys. He's got a lot of veterans around here who are instilling the knowledge in him and saying, hey, on these plays, when you see these reads, just give me the freaking ball and I got you. Right? You see this, dump the ball off. You've got McCaffrey as a safety valve anytime you're in trouble. You've got George Kittle, who cannot be taken down by one player pretty much anywhere. So you have a lot of different dangerous weapons on that team. So the 49ers are going to be a formidable opponent. And I don't think Dallas is going to be able to overcome what they do, but I do think they're going to be able to make it closer than most people give them credit for. And if you can keep a game close, you never really know.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right about that. I mean, the fact that, and I've just been so impressed with Brock Purdy because of the fact of, like, number one, he's a 4-year college student out of Iowa State, and he had some really, really good offenses. I mean, the fact that Breece Hall came out the way he did,
Right.
with the Jets and was successful, and he had several other offensive weapons that he really threw to and was building his confidence behind that. And I think having to be a late round pick, which, it's funny. You watch these AFC quarterbacks, and they're all first-round talents. And then you look at the NFC, and all they are is they're about hidden gems. They're not about, like first-round talent. But I will say this. I think maybe this year may be the time to change that. Because I think, you've got Bryce Young, you got C.J. Stroud, and you got Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. And we say this all the time. Only 4 quarterbacks that come into this league. There's bound to be one that'll be a bust. I mean, we saw the year before where Trevor Lawrence was a number 1 pick. Zach Wilson was clearly the bust. Justin Fields, if he gets a better situation in Chicago, he'll be bound to be a better quarterback. And then you watch this past year, it was kind of hard because of the fact of Kenny Pickett was the star, and I think he'll be better in Pittsburgh. Yeah. And then the rest of them, like Desmond Ridder, he's a nice kid, but I don't see him being a future in Atlanta. And then Matt Corral, I haven't seen him much. So I don't know what we may get out of him. He could be coming out of the gate next year, and he could be good. So
we did see one game out of Sam Howell. It was pretty impressive.
That was very impressive. That's why I'm saying, I'm like, I think Washington. So that brings me to my point too with the NFC East. So I knew the Eagles moving into this season and the Cowboys, they were going to be the two competitors. I wasn't sure about the Giants and Washington. And then they just completely blew us away. Washington, I think, needs a better situation. Now, I did get reports they are sticking with Carson Wentz this year, which honestly, please, let's at the very least, can we stop hating on this man? Because I know it sucks in a situation because of the fact of, well, he went from Philadelphia and then went to Indianapolis and goes to Washington, and I'm like, is he going to go anywhere else and he's not going to be loved? Like it's so hard to do that when you're just looking at the situation around you, and he's got great weapons, so it's not like you couldn't make this work. They just got to get more pieces around him. So, and then Brian Dable comes in with the Giants, and they were 6-1 to start the season. And it's just unbelievable to watch this division. How impressed were you with this division now, like through this year, knowing that the Eagles and the Cowboys are going to be competitive, but then to see the Giants and the Commanders, I mean, that makes you excited for what next year it's going to bring.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm disappointed in the Commanders for Carson Wentz, and I will tell you this. These are the places that he has a problem. Talent, he may be the best talented quarterback in the division, but heart and brain, that's where he's lacking at. Had they stuck with Taylor Heinicke, they would have been in the playoffs. They were bad with Carson Wentz. They took him out. They put a less talented guy in that the team loved, that has the heart, the desire, that has the good mental capacity, and they were winning games. They got themselves into the playoffs. Yep. Then they made a poor decision to bring back the guy who always turns the ball over, who can't finish out games, and it pushed them back down out of the playoffs. So, lesson that they still haven't learned, if they're going to bring him back, is he's not the guy for you. You're not going to win because your locker room does not endear himself to the locker rooms. It doesn't matter how much talent you have. If the guys around you don't want to go out there and die for you, sacrifice for you, make the extra plays for you, then what's the problem? I think the Commanders could use help at a tight end. They have 2 good running backs. They have 3 solid receivers, right?
And they haven't had a healthy tight end since Chris Cooley.
Right.
Seriously, yeah.
But if they can get a tight end and the rest of the weapons that are there, if you put a guy back there, if you put Taylor Heinicke back there next year, this is a playoff team. And not because he's more talented, but because they will play for him. He has the it factor of a NFL quarterback. Wentz does not have that. You can't make a guy have what he doesn't have. He's got talent, but if you can't evaluate the way he played this year and what your team did around him versus what they did for Heinicke versus what they did for Sam Howell, then you have a problem as an organization, and that's why you're going to always be the team while everyone else is good to not be good.
Right.
Now, when you talk about the Giants, I think Daniel Jones is a guy that they need to figure out a way to sign, maybe to a 1 or 2 year deal and see how it works out for both teams. Definitely wide receiver. I'm the Giants.
100%.
You got to go draft the wide receiver. You got to go sign 2 wide receivers in free agency.
And you got to get rid of Kenny Golladay because
yes,
that contract has just been nothing but it's been a complete anchor as to what they're supposed to be, and it's just
quite the albatross that contract was for him.
Yeah.
But you thought it would work out. Obviously, it didn't. And he was only 72 catches away from getting his bonus, man. Only 72 catches. So he's definitely not a fit for that team. I mean, I would trade him for a smoke and a pancake if I were them. Bottle of Corona, whatever bag of Doritos, whatever you guys want to give us for him. I would definitely get rid of him, and I think he may be better somewhere else. But I think you have Daniel Jones. If you can keep Saquon Barkley healthy, I love Matt Breida as his backup because Breida is a guy that from San Francisco, from a running team, doesn't have to be the starter, but when you give him opportunities, he'll make plays. And then obviously we know Dallas, we know Philly, right? We hear about them all the time. The media is either dogging them or loving them, depending on what's happening that specific week. But I think that the next few years, I think is going to be what is the Giants and the Commanders going to do. If they can make themselves a little bit better every year, this is going to be a formidable division. There won't be any more talk of NFC least. We will continue to be the NFC beast.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at him with the potentiality, I mean, I just love how Brian Dable came into this scenario, and the Giants, they've had 1 winning season in 10 years. Yeah. And then the fact that he comes in and reshapes this organization with what he's got. I mean, the fact that he comes from a pedigree of a lot of NFL teams and worked with a lot of NFL quarterback calibers, like even like Josh Allen, and then to come in and get Daniel Jones. And I think after watching his game against Minnesota, that is very deserving of a 2-year contract. I think because he looked different. He was
Mm-hmm.
running the football. He was opening up plays for the offense. Now it's unfortunate coming against, Philadelphia, and it's like a roadblock, but
Yeah.
still I look at that situation and I'm like, he can work for this offense, but I think 2 years, it'll give you time to evaluate that next year to see, is he potentially the guy? And then at that point, you can then reevaluate if something else, goes wrong, and then you could just kind of move off this scenario. But
Yeah.
it's funny you mentioned with the tight end, because you know what? If I'm Washington and I just watched the national championship, I am looking at that kid Brock Bowers up at Georgia, and I think he
Very
could.
quickly.
Oh,
Yeah.
very, very quickly. I think he's fierce. I think he's built differently, and I think that would be entertaining watching the Commanders having that kind of tight end. Because they haven't had a successful one since Chris Cooley, and the whole offense. I think with Cam Simmons, even with Terry McLaurin and a couple of these guys, they work really, really well. It's having to get the right play caller and the right the right quarterback to set this up.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I mean, and again, it is unfortunate with Carson Wentz, and the only reason why that I say, because I mean, I watched the situation in Indianapolis, and Jim Irsay is just, he's on another different level, and you can let go of a guy with 27 touchdowns and 7 picks, but still, I mean, you got to have the right situation at hand. And if this don't work with Carson Wentz, I think you got to kind of move off. Now, you do have Sam Howell, and you do have a couple of the guys, but Washington's going to at some point get this right. But I just look at the East, and because a lot of people talked so heavily about the West that they don't even pay attention to what the East is. And I think now they're kind of sitting in their radar. So now it's like the everybody in the East all performed very massively, and they were exceptional. I thought it was great. But watching throughout the rest of the playoffs, I mean, so this was my big thing going into the show. Kansas City and Jacksonville. Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes is just a one of a kind. It doesn't matter if his ankle is hurting or whatnot, but he's got a really, really good veteran backup in Chad Henne, who's just going to make plays. And Andy Reid, 10 playoff wins in 2 organizations, the Chiefs and the Eagles. And it's like you are just watching a head coach who's just a beautiful play designer and is somebody that just, he gets it. I mean, we've watched Bill Belichick for years. We watched Mike Tomlin. Watching Andy Reid for years now, I think he's really stepped into that role where he is just more than elite. He's just that kind of coach. Now, it is unfortunate because Jacksonville, when Trevor Lawrence throws a pick, they're 2-12. I mean, it is unfortunate. And the only big win was that 27-point choker from the Chargers, which was the one big win. But I don't know. As I'm looking at the Bengals and the Bills, I mean, they both have issues. The Bengals are banged up on offensive line. Now, I'm keeping the thought of, well, they did make the Super Bowl without one.
Yeah.
And Buffalo, they're kind of banged and dinged up a little bit, but they're playing with a lot of heart. Does it kind of feel like that this whole pathway to the Super Bowl, is it simple for Kansas City, or maybe do they have a competition up in front of them if it's either the Bengals or Bills?
So here's the thing with that. So also want to just say, well, Andy Reid, he's learned to run the ball more. In Philadelphia, he did not run the ball in situations where he really shouldn't and mismanaged the clock.
Yeah.
He's corrected those things for the most part since he's been in Kansas City. So that's why he's had that little bit level of higher success there as far as Super Bowls, winning Super Bowls. But to answer your question, I think the biggest thing is if they play Buffalo, they're in Atlanta. So the Chiefs don't have home field advantage.
Right.
So that's a huge thing because they're going to be playing in a dome. They're not going to be in the element. So that's going to play into Buffalo. We do know that Josh Allen has an issue with his elbow. He's been playing through it, but we know that that's affecting the way he throws, and he doesn't look like the same quarterback since it. Right. I think with Cincinnati, you're going to take that team out into those elements with no line. I think you're you I don't think Joe Burrow would finish that game. Right. I just think he would get knocked out just by the cornucopia hits he's going to take because they're going to just blitz all day. They're going to say, hey, you're going to beat us a couple of times. It is what it is. We are going to put the fear of God in your quarterback and make him want to get rid of that ball too quickly. So I think that's what would happen in that situation. But I think if you look at Buffalo in a dome against Kansas City, I think we're looking at a very tight game because you're taking all of the benefits away. Now, you could be helping Mahomes a little bit because of the ankle, but I think you're helping Josh Allen. You're helping a lot of the other players that are dinged up or beat up a little bit on Buffalo playing inside that dome in controlled situations. So I think you're looking at a very strong game if that does happen. It's kind of unfortunate what caused it to happen with Hamlin. And I think also those guys are playing for Hamlin, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you have a guy to play for, you just figure out ways to overcome some deficiencies. Back to the Eagles in 2017, a lot of injuries, a lot of guys that should have been contributing to us winning a championship, they weren't able to play. But we were able to just band together and we had something to fight for. So I think Buffalo would be the one opponent that Kansas City should be wary of. And their defense is pretty good. The offensive line, it's not the greatest either, but it's going to be good enough where they can't just tee off on Josh Allen all game. And Josh Allen's a big man.
Oh, yeah.
He'll take that ball and run with it and run you over. I don't like seeing him do that because I think you shorten your career when you do that. But a lot of people love it. It's exciting to see. And I mean, if you're going to do it, it's trying to win a Super Bowl. It's AFC Championship game, Super Bowl. That's when you lay it out in line. If you have a short career but you win a Super Bowl, you're looked at a lot highly regarded than a guy that played 15 years but never won a Super Bowl.
That's true, and it's an all or nothing mentality. And I mean, yeah, I would be very interested to see how that plays out, and we'll get a chance to see who will be victorious today between the Bengals and the Bills. I mean, it was such a tough game because I love both those quarterbacks. They're both elite in different ways, and they just know how to distribute the football and man the offense. So before we go, who are you really leaning towards to possibly face into the championship next week? Cowboys or the Niners?
I'm expecting the Niners to win. I don't have a preference because I feel like if you're going to win, you got to go through whoever's in front of you. There's no like, oh, I want the easiest team. No, just give me whoever's going to be there. Let's see what happens. Hopefully, whichever team it is, we can go out there and win. I don't care if it's by 20. I don't care if it's by 2. I don't care if it's by 1. I don't care if it's by 3. As long as we have more points at the end of the game, I'm happy.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. You got exactly all the words from Cool McCain as well. Excited for the Philadelphia Eagles and continuing to be the underdogs that they are. Appreciate you stopping by. Where can people find you on social medias?
So you can find me on YouTube at Eagles Elite Podcast. We have that on on Wednesday nights at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, p.m. Eastern. Wow, it's early in the morning.
Yeah, and thank God it's only a Sunday.
Absolutely. And you can find me on Tuesdays. Jake is on there during the season as well with the NFL Matchup Madness. That's on playcallersportstalk.com/live. Also on Play Callers on Friday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Saturday nights back on the Eagles Elite. You can find my NFC Beast show. I have other guys that are contributors for the other NFC East teams. We all get together to talk about a division, what's happening with different things. We're actually going to be doing our show tonight instead of last night because we were preempted by the Eagles game. We weren't going to miss that. But so, yeah, man, just a lot of different places. And also, no one likes us and we don't care. Eagles motto, we live by it.
There you go. Well, it's going to be some exciting stuff. I'm just amped up to how, the road to the Super Bowl is really, really going to be. And I think it's going to be a fun one for sure, but really pulling for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here up on the show. Have a great rest of the weekend, and we'll definitely see who the Eagles might end up having to face against come next week in championship weekend. Have a good one, Cole. Appreciate you coming by.
No problem. And whoever it is next week, just remember, you did great to get to the championship game, but you're going home.
There you go. All right. Yeah, cool.